Well, hey everybody. Welcome to our town hall today on data centers. That includes AI, but mostly data centers. I'm Mark Nair. I'm running for Congress, you could tell here. So one of the reasons that I want to do these things is I think that we have lost, I know we've lost, um, the way of having conversations with people, especially in this district. We don't have people we elect that do these kind of things anymore, that are interactive, they're dynamic. The district is big. It stretches 40,000 square miles. So sometimes we have to use technology, the way we can bring everyone together. And this is a good example of that. We had quite a few people ask us to do these different town halls about data centers. And through the district, there's this gold rush. I say gold rush, from investors wanting to take advantage of our area to build these big, extravagant, monstrous things. So tonight is a town hall for you. So what we have for you is me, and then we have a couple of really smart people who are going to talk in their areas of expertise about data centers. And then after that, we will open it up to all of you to ask questions. The important thing about town halls is that you get to ask because we don't know much except what you want to learn about. We can tell you things, but you need to let us know what's on your mind, what are you worried about, and what are the things that you want to look forward to. Now, inside of today's conversation, it's not just information, it's about action. So we will have a couple of strategies that you can use if you want to, if you're living in a community that has some data centers coming or a threat of data centers coming. So that's going to be part of our strategy here tonight. So before we get to that, though, I just want to take a little bit of indulgence to talk on the topic of AI, both the economy of AI, data centers, and the technology. I know both. My first patent in 1999 is an automation patent. I say AI light. It's nowhere close to what AI is today, using these technical things called transformers and things that nobody really understands. And that's the thing that people don't get. Nobody really understands what's going on in the black box. We know it takes a lot of power. We know it takes a lot of water, but we don't know what happens inside of it. But we do know how businesses work. And we know that the bosses will say, if there's a technology that I can use to replace human workers, I will do it. So right now we're facing a dilemma. And the dilemma is we invest in a technology that will either replace humans to do jobs that they've been doing for a while, or it will not. And we've invested close to $1 trillion of capital expenditure on technologies that will fail. And I think we're seeing both that will happen. The market around data centers, around AI, makes no sense. The money makes no sense. It's a circular business model. NVIDIA is funneling money to companies, and then the money's going back, and it gets very complicated. And I think this complication, we call it in economic terms a Byzantine series of rules. People think, well, it's so complicated. The smart people must have figured it out, so it must be valid. It isn't. The smart people haven't figured it out. There is an interesting technology, and people are using it for interesting stuff. It really is. But AI exists all over the place in self-driving, in airplanes. Different pieces of AI help us every day, but it doesn't mean that it can destroy or let it destroy an economy as well. So these are the demarcation pieces as far as policy goes, as far as who is electing you to look out for your best interest. These are the things that I find very interesting to help you with. Now, all that said, I look at data centers today, and we'll hear from our experts coming up, and then you'll have your chances to ask questions. It's very speculative. The market is no more speculative than the metaverse, Web3, crypto, blockchain, you name it. It's always the grift that pushes and pushes and pushes to extract more value. And I will use extraction quite a bit. Data centers themselves are extractive on environmental costs, they're extractive on economic cost, and they don't push back into the economy. They will say, we're going to hire quite a few people to work in a data center. This is not true. Data centers don't require a lot of people to work in them. It's skeletal at best. AI right now has lost more money than any other project in human existence. I mean, we're walking up to about $700 billion of losses. When you use ChatGPT or Claude, you name it, the company loses money for every request that you make. So they have to make up that money somehow, and they're trying to make it up by extracting the value from build out of data centers on the cheap. But the people who suffer in the end is you and the people who live in the community. The people who need the water, your power rates will go up, your water rates will go up. It's happened across the country. It's only a matter of time before it will happen here. If these data centers actually hold on and get built, which I really have questions about because the economics make no sense. Right now, in our total market, the Magnificent Seven, seven biggest technology companies that make up 40% of the revenue of the S&P 500, they're exposed on AI. And I will tell you that there is a threat, national threat, if China decides to flood our market with open source cheap AI that runs on the device, the market collapses. And this is a big threat. And the future will be AI that runs on a local device. It's not going to be big data centers. This is no different than what we've seen again and again in history. We just don't learn our lessons. So tonight, my hope is that with the experts we have coming on, we will all learn a little bit more and then answer your questions about what to do next. So all that said, let's start with, we have a couple people. First is Clayton Tucker. Clayton Tucker is not here tonight, but he made a video for us. But he is, I'll just read bio here. He's a former water researcher for the National Science Foundation, kind of close to my heart because I'm a mentor for the National Science Foundation. Secretary of the Texas Farmers Union, a fair trade organizer, and helps manage his family ranch in Lampasas. He is running to be our next Texas Agricultural Commissioner to make food and farming affordable and protect our water. So let's see what Clayton has to say.
Howdy, folks. Clayton Tucker. I am running for Texas Agriculture Commissioner. I'm sorry I couldn't be there on this day, but I so much appreciate y'all for being there. Let's talk these data centers because this is an important issue. Had you asked me 9 months ago if I'd be running on this, I would ask you, what does the Ag Commissioner have to do with data centers and what's the big fuss about them? Well, let's talk about that big fuss because there's some very real and concerning things behind it. Where they built some of these things in other states, power prices dang near doubled, up 70%. It's projected our power bills will go up by possibly as much. It could go up significantly more because we are building these things in a grid that's not super reliable, and we're paying for a lot of those updates. They'll say they're paying for the power plants, and sure, they might pay for some of the power plants, but the connections to those plants typically is the taxpayers who pay that in a good number of cases. Let's talk about water. These things are water hogs. We're building water hogs in arid areas. So, in a lot of areas, wells started running dry. A lot of wells started becoming toxic with heavy metals due to construction. Let's also talk about local infrastructure. A lot of heavy machinery. This destroys local roads. Guess who pays for that? Well, they're not usually paying property taxes, so usually it's the taxpayers paying for that. And then was also talk about the noise pollution. There's been growing body of research that this constant noise pollution, which you can hear from some cases 5 miles away, and it's 24/7, and it literally will cause your house to vibrate. That is causing neurological damage to children under 5, and is even causing some dementia symptoms in folks over 65. So it's literally harming our health. We might be asking, well, why are they building all these things then? The short answer is because this is a bubble. This is a 2008 style bubble where you have three corporations just trading money back and forth. They're trying to get so big that it'll become too big to fail. So when the bubble bursts, because they all know they're in a bubble, they'll get bailed out. These data centers are literally nothing useful. They're for AI slop that you'll see on social media. They're for automating our jobs away. So then the big tech three can, own even more of our economy. Therefore, possibly even mass surveillance, what you see with Palantir and things going on there. These centers are not for Amarillo. They're not even for Texas. They're for Wall Street at the best, and for worse, or even for worse reasons. So, as Texas Agriculture Commissioner, I'll be issuing what's called Ag Impact Studies. These will delay, at the very least, a lot of these data centers and will bring out to light some of their true costs, some of their true implications. We're also going to be working very closely with locals, hopefully you yourself, to really build local resistance so that we can get county commissioners to flip, so we can get state house to flip, so that we can even get Congress to get its act together. With that being said, I appreciate y'all being here. I appreciate that we are together in this fight because it is going to be a fight, but what we're fighting for is literally the state of West Texas itself. If we allow these things to come and take our water, there might not be an Amarillo left. So you can find me online, ClaytonTuckerTX.com. We have a petition, Stop AI Data Centers. I ask for you to sign that petition and ask you to share that petition. Thank y'all.
Getting Congress getting its act together is a big haul on that one. So thank you, Clayton. We have a couple of just real quick before we introduce our other speakers. A couple images here that I want to show you that sets the framework for the conversation. All right. So this is the aquifer. It's the nation's largest aquifer. Stretches all the way down. You can see it's in black right there. So, okay, we pretty much have an idea. Those of us who live in the panhandle area of this district know more or less the aquifer. There are different specific and smaller aquifers that fit into this, but the gist is here is the picture of the aquifer. All right. So this is 1997, and you can see the saturation. Now, aquifers aren't giant oceans of water. There are these kind of pockets of water all over the place. But we have a good idea of where the saturation is. Now let's take a look at the current map that we have. 2023, and this is the decline of water. This is not with data centers or other things sucking up the water. Mainly it's, the big culprits on this are going to be a lot of farming, a lot of ranching, cities using water, the same story that we know. But tonight is not about how we're using that for normal daily life. Today is about the threat to use our natural resources that isn't part of daily life. Now, this gets back to what I'm very interested in, which is not extracting an economy, but adding back to an economy, recharging this aquifer, for example. And how do we do it the right way? People in Albuquerque have figured this out with a local aquifer, and we can do the same. And I think we have one more picture, right? Yeah. So this is a picture of current data centers and proposed inside of the state. And you can see in our area, all the way down to 87. It goes down toward Denton, which is the entire congressional district. These big dots. That just shows you what people are trying to do, and both the economic threat, the physical threat, and then where these things are going to live. And I will tell you, it is mind-boggling to me, based on those previous images of the aquifer, that the Fermi project that's up here in Amarillo, which is going to be one of the largest power projects, is power itself. And let's not get confused, and we will talk about this later on, because people will tell you the computers work in a closed loop system. They'll say all these phrases. But if you take a look at just the power generation and how much water that takes, especially nukes that are running, it's a pretty bad proposition, especially in time of drought. So, okay. So thank you. All right. So we have our guests here. Each is going to speak for a few minutes, about 5 minutes apiece. Then we'll bring everyone together and we'll answer your questions. So my first guest here is Michael Ford. And I've known Michael for years. And I will tell you, Michael is one of the smartest guys I know, and he does not stop. He coached my son's soccer team first time I met him. And I thought, oh, just a dude coaching soccer. This was so wrong. He digs into stuff and he will not let you off the hook. I know this firsthand. When I was in the city council, he did not let me off the hook. And I never told him until tonight how much I appreciated that. At first I thought, oh man, come on, give me a break. But my job was to not get breaks. My job was to listen to this and understand where I was messing up or if I didn't have the right information. So Michael's worked in the nuclear industry. He served 2 Texas governors for a total of 14 years as an appointed state official. He has served in capacities to support and serve the residents of his community through charitable organizations, professional organizations, boards of directors, and youth organizations. I'm going to throw in soccer. And most recently, he's the founder of the Panhandle Taxpayers for Transparency, which is the thing that we should always strive for, is transparency and how your tax money is used, all sorts of crazy things that governments do. So, Michael, welcome on.
Thanks, Mark. I had to not be slayed by the technology here and unmute my microphone. Um, it's great to be on this panel with you, and just as and I've told Mark this before, but I'm just super excited that he's running an intensely smart man and just a always looking to solve problems and that's what's got me excited about his race. And we do need someone who can solve problems and not just parrot propaganda. I think that would be a wonderful change. Um, I would like to start off by saying, as Mark said, I've been an advocate of nuclear power for 4 decades, and I always caveat that with the criteria that it must be in a location that can be supported by the environment and not deplete the environment or affect adversely the populations around it. That's not what we have in Fermi. We have that exact condition. It's going to deplete the aquifer significantly. You've got a nuclear power plant that is plants, plural, 4 of them, 4 AP1000s that are being built, and these are the standard, very large nuclear power plants that are being built around a nuclear weapons facility within 1 kilometer of the Pantex plant, which is our nation's only nuclear weapons facility. And there is a reason why, for the last 50 years, there's never been a nuclear facility or any other facility built next to the Pantex plant is because you have the potential for either incidents at the plant or incidents caused by another facility causing interactions that are, let's say, deleterious at best and at worst, very, very bad for the population and the environment. So, in that light, what we're seeing right now with the Fermi project is something that is remarkable in the fact that it violates the guidance of the International Atomic Energy Agency in terms of co-locating a nuclear power plant adjacent to a nuclear weapons facility. We do have similar regulations within the United States, NRC regulations, although they are not as stridently worded as the IAEA regulations are. So we're just going to start by laying the groundwork there, saying that international organizations strongly discourage this type of siting. And as Mark mentioned, the water use for the AP1000s are at a minimum of 12 million gallons per day when they're fully built out. They have taken their design, and where there is normally in a nuclear power plant where there's normally a third cooling loop, they've deleted that because they don't have the water to make a standard nuclear power plant, and they've gone and done a drastic redesign of the facility that we can't. If you go to the NRC website right now, USNRC, or NRC.gov, you will not find any details on this design. So we're still trying to find it, but how they're going to cool these reactors is still a mystery because they've deleted their cooling loop. If we back up and take a further look out, they're building a 11 gigawatt. Actually, it's a 6 gigawatt gas plant, and then they've now just recently announced that they're going to go to 11 gigawatts immediately after they received their permit from the TCEQ. As Mark mentioned, the taxpayers for the Panhandle Taxpayers for Transparency, PT4T, our organization that we've had for 10 years, is actively opposing that. And we are the only organization. There have been many organizations, and Kendra will speak about the organization that she heads. They're a wonderful organization, that are opposed to the Fermi project, but the PT4T is the one that's leading the legal challenge right now. And we are engaged in and will be engaged in fighting the air permit, and we'll continue to be that engaged in that. And we'll be soon be filing an appeal to the TCEQ, and then we assume that that will be rejected by the TCEQ commissioners, and then we'll be filing in district court an appeal. So later on, I'll put in see if we can put in a good word for PT4T. So we are doing some heavy lifting there in terms of legal fees, and any help that might come our way, we'd be significantly appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Make sure there we go. Okay. I'm really glad you're here tonight. I actually I have deep curiosity, and this will be beyond the scope of tonight, but of what the South Koreans are doing on a small fusion reaction. I think that we have undercut our research ability in the country to look into these technologies. If you just look at the craziness that's happening right now in the Middle East and the cost of oil going through the roof, and we tell a story of how we are self-sufficient, but we tell a story, but it's not a true story because we're in a global economy. But new technologies will help with that. And I'm just very curious, but maybe that's a conversation we could have on the Michael and Mark show about small fusion reaction one time. My next guest is Will Masters. Will is an attorney, an environmentalist with deep ties to the Amarillo area. He loves springs, streams, rivers, and just can't watch them die. I know that Will has worked closely with Wildcat Bluff Nature Center. And I know this because one, I used to be on the board of Wildcat Bluff a while ago, a long time ago, but I'm on the board of Mariposa, which is right next door. And I think we'll have the heart about how we keep our natural environment, especially for the community that's growing, sometimes a little nutty, how it expands. And we just don't keep our history in mind when we are expanding the city. So, Will, thank you for coming. You have the floor.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, so I care about like Amarillo. I'm blessed with family. And another way of saying is like I'm stuck here. I grew up here. My family's been in the Panhandle for multiple generations. And whenever I was raised, we had the privilege, like my dad made it a real point to take me and my siblings out into the outdoors, and hunting and fishing and hiking and playing. And all the life around here, it's all like oriented around the water. And so we just kind of got to see some really neat places in the Panhandle growing up. And I've continued to have privileged access. My wife's family is also from here, and they've got a big ranch north of town. And it's awesome. And so like during like the drought of 2011 to 2014, I saw it, and it hurts to see, but like we experienced it. And then the rains come and some of the springs come back, and I saw that too. It's like this country can be really hostile, but it's not always hostile. It's sometimes like Edenic kind of. I'm an attorney, and I've done some work in the environmental space. Like I worked for the Uranium and Energy Corporation for a period of time. They were doing some like solutions mining in Goliad County. And we practiced in the North Permian Basin. So like Denver City and Seminole. The oil field is like, I don't know. I guess I kind of like learned how like industry works and how it's like supposed to work, or rather, so we have all these like rules and these laws. And if there's cleanups or requirements and they're met and they're fixed, but then the reality is like this is a huge area, and it's a mess, and things spill and humans screw up. Shoot, I mean, like all in all, I'm just like I'm very skeptical of this effort. I started like caring about water because that's where like if there's life here, it's because there's water. If there's wealth or health here, it's because there's water. And if there's not, then there's not. And so I see it as like a sovereignty kind of issue. Like if we want to be hopeful about our future, if we want to invest in a hopeful future, if we want a better like future for our children, we're already screwing up big time. Like that's like this set of circumstances that our region is facing in terms of water insecurity and really like extraction. It was dire before this kind of AI pressure got here. Like we were already in trouble. And that's what's so interesting to see is like that doesn't matter because it's like, hey, we're going to do this here too. And I'm really reminded of Corpus Christi, where like there's plenty of water for the locals that live there. But if you add on top of that industry, soon there's not enough water for the locals, and it's just a giant mess. And so I'm really skeptical. I do have to say, like, I suspect the audience here is like pretty friendly. I've not encountered very many locals that are actually like in favor of this Fermi development, much less some of the others. And except for the ones that are getting paid, of course. And so like it's in fact one of the silver linings of this is I've been very impressed to see like young people particularly kind of come out of the woodwork and care, because like for years I go to these like playa field days or Stewart on our aquifer field days, groundwater conferences, and it's kind of like the same old people. And that was already frustrating. And so I kind of got the impression that the people that aren't at those things don't really care. They're not connected. And since Fermi's announcement has been made, in the past few months to nearly a year, I've just been blown away at the number of people that do care and are coming forward. I am also fearful because these people are passionate and they rightly or wrongly kind of see this as an existential threat to our community. And the thing that is scary to me is there is a perception that there are no like legal routes to recourse. In fact, I suggest the reason that Fermi is here is because it doesn't require our local consent. They don't need us to agree in order to mine our water and kind of control and acquire the energy and the land necessary. And so it's this like it epitomizes the like forfeiture of agency and self-determination that has plagued our rural areas kind of for my whole life. So like, yeah, my whole life, like these rural communities that Amarillo kind of relies on have declined, and ditto for those around Lubbock. There's fewer and fewer family farms. There's fewer and fewer seeps and springs. I mean, just like this shit's gotten worse. And then here we are kind of in this acceleration period where like, hey, there's a whole new category of water users. And the industrial demand is a little bit different. And so the agricultural demand, we have all these wells kind of spread out across this, hundreds of thousands of square miles. The industrial demand is different because they're buying from our utilities. It's more like kind of pointed. And so it's going to have a much more, I suggest, like serious impact upon the public who rely upon those utilities. I could keep talking, but until I have some ideas to what y'all like want to hear, I'd like to just kind of end by saying there's a revolutionary in North Africa, Traore or something, and a quote that was attributed to him, and I'm sure somebody else too, is the one who feeds you leads you. And by that I mean like our government is going to be our government until like the water doesn't come out of the taps anymore, or until we can't get food or medicine from the stores. Like there's this kind of like basic sense of security, and if that security is lost, just a tremendous amount of uncertainty is injected into our future. And so I'm just like I am concerned. I am proud of folks like Mark Nair and Clayton Tucker for getting up there and running for office. I'm not at all convinced that they can provide a meaningful solution, nor that like my vote could sway things. And that kind of is getting back to this point of like this like powerlessness. And so there's a lot of particularly young folks here that are like impassioned, excited, upset, and without legal recourse. And that is just like a formula for disaster.
All right.
Cool.
Well, thank you, Will. I appreciate all that. I'll just say that the reason I can't speak for Clayton nor for anyone else running for office, just me, but the reason that I'm doing this is for the very reasons you're talking about. The U.S. House of Representatives, a lot of people in it. It's 435 people, and a lot of them are boneheads. Um, but an ocean is filled with drops of water, and one drop really does count. So I think if you look at the aggregate on voting, and people, I hear this a lot, I don't think my vote counts. And if you look at the math, you know what? There are maybe 3 people up in a county in the northern part of the Panhandle that turn out to vote, and people don't do it. In the primaries, we had 4%, 5% of people vote. So if people do turn out and they just express their voice, we can change things. I firmly believe this. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here in this chair in this kind of warmish room. Maybe it's my cold. I don't know. But I do truly believe that we can do it, and people on the ground helping out, we can all pull together and do it. Because if we don't, it's the elite capitalists that take over the world and the billionaires. And we say it all the time, and I hear it all the time. The billionaires is this strange, vague, amorphous thing, but it is serious, and they do not care. They care about extraction, wealth extraction, and not about building up. And the whole idea, the whole premise of Article 1 of the Constitution is to say people here have representation, and we want to have our voice heard, because that's where the money is. It's every 2 years, and you better show up and you better tell us what's going on. And we don't have that representation now. That's why I'm doing this. So I hear you, but I think all of us together, that's why we're doing this tonight, is to get the word out, answer questions, and then maybe we can get enough momentum from this that we can change the status of the country, and where the country is, where Texas is, the country is, and that goes the world. So, all right. Our next and last speaker is Kendra Kay. Kendra is delightful. She is a tattoo artist, which I did not know until I read it on this piece of paper, but I should have guessed it. Mother of 2 and a full-time organizer for Women's March. She's been researching data centers across all aspects of the community and its community impact since June of last year. And she travels across the state to raise awareness of this issue. Kendra is going to be our secret method of how we actually make some change happen. So Kendra, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. I am and that was a lot of really great points to hear from everybody. I spent a lot of time over the last decade sitting in a chair listening to people tell me their art wants and how to turn those into little pieces of stickers that stay on their body forever. And also listen to their greatest fears, listen to the things that stress them out day to day, and listen to their general distrust in whatever mainstream media or mainstream politic issue is going on at the same time. So Will's sentiment about the lack of trust in government and representation is not new. This is something that is easily reflected in the number of people that turn out to vote. It is a lack of organization on our part, but that is something that we do have the ability to do. So I'm here because I believe in our ability to learn about what is happening and take that knowledge and apply it to solutions. So what I do is I go as far up as I was actually just in New York doing this data center panel, and we've been in Arizona and New Mexico, and this weekend I'll be in San Antonio. We're talking to people in Tyler, Dallas, Arkansas, Memphis. I mean, everywhere that there is a brand new data center popping up, we're talking to some folks there because they're scared and worried about what's going to happen happen in their community. I have a friend in Lenore, North Carolina, who they've already had a Google data center for a really long time. And over the last 2 years, decided they were going to expand and make it a larger campus so that they could house some AI data center equipment there. And they tore up a little bit more land, and they closed down a couple of the streets that the residents used to get into the main city, which was annoying enough. But then they said that they started getting calls and letters from their electricity providers saying, like, hey, we need you to really start limiting the amount of electricity you're using between these hours. We're just it's tight. Like we're going to need more of it. The data center really does affect people in their day-to-day lives. And she said, I've been paying for my data, for my internet, my access for electricity for this whole time I own this house. I'm going to continue to use what I need. I'm not like powering anything crazy. I'm not using a ton. It's just me and my partner. So we're okay. And they called to let her know that if she didn't comply, that Google was talking about putting controls on their house so that they could decide how much electricity would go to her home. Not how much she needed, but how much she would be allowed to have, because that's how much extra oomph it puts on our electricity grid. We know here in Texas that it took that one winter storm Uri to knock out and have brownouts and blackouts across the state. We're looking at, I think, 400 data centers being put in. Regardless of how many of those are behind the meter, there's no like easy solution for this. It just sounds like they've figured out the answer. What we'll do is we'll put a whole bunch of natural gas units on here. That's going to solve it. No, like that's why we had all these green initiatives like 20, 30 years ago, is to get away from natural gas for all of these reasons related to pollution and the way that the water is reinjected back into the ground and how that affects not only the ecosystem that it's in, but can cause earthquakes just on the other side of Texas. So they already know that there is problems with these big dreams of, well, we'll just do it XYZ way. There's not. There's give and there's take. And because we are more disenfranchised with our votes, with our voice, with our ability to communicate with each other and get on the same page and be fully informed, and to decide how to make those changes, we're going to be the ones that they take from. The people that will always benefit are going to be the rich, because there's fewer of them to get on the same page, and they can afford politicians to make the laws for them. Right now, they are floating a House bill that says that any AI data center or regular data center that's being proposed or trying to be built right now if it is only being like taken down because of an environmental law, say like they're polluting too much or the water is too much or something like that, that would say like, okay, actually you can't build that here because it's too much pollution or it's too much wastewater, then they will elevate that to the federal government and they will solve that problem, and then they will allow that to continue its construction. So they're actually doing more really weird things to allow data centers to continue to be built at the expense of our clean air and our clean water, our farms, our ag industry. I feel like they're kind of just throwing spaghetti noodles at the wall and seeing what sticks. And so far, everything has not worked out for them. Like they're losing a lot of money, and investors are losing a lot of their ability to hang in there, because there are many groups of people all over Texas and all over the South that are standing up to say like, no, actually, we don't want you here. We'll do whatever we have to do, but we're going to come and show up to these town halls. We're going to show up and we're going to vote. We're going to go. One city did a recall and got all 3 of their elected officials thrown out And we're just disappointed with how they prioritize data centers needs over their own, which is tragic but true. It's it's our job. It's inconvenient. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of time and a lot of sitting through bad news, but we have to learn what's going on. We have to work with each other. We have to set really good boundaries for ourselves and power map out, like figure out who's the representative you need to call and complain to, and how many people will it take for us to all say no. But that inevitability of like, it's just going to happen, it's just not true. It's just not true. So I believe in us. I think we can do it, and it's just going to take us all working together to get those things done, because I don't really see that there's a choice for us to sit this one out. I don't know how you sell a house and move to another area if you don't have any water in your well. I don't know how you raise children or grow crops or have a business in a place that has no water, but I don't want to find out. So
Thank you, Kendra. Thank you. It's so great to see you. I thank you, Will. Thank you, Michael, for joining us. So we have these areas of expertise. I will say with Kendra, we can solve our history of this country has been a history of both innovation and not reaction to problems, but anticipating problems and solving them from the very founding of the country. I will also say that a core tenet of federalism is local power control, local control over what's happening in your lives. And we have sort of lost this. As a matter of fact, it used to be a Republican Party standard, you know, local control, just hypocrisy. That's not true. We have ceded so much local control to the state to the feds. The 10th Amendment is all about it. And really, in the Constitution, and how I read the Constitution, is that powers are enumerated to the federal government, and that's what you got. You can't just take everything and do anything you want. So if there is an issue with local control over a data center, that should be local. And I will also say that the money is not a problem. It's the will, the political courage to spend the money the right way, which is the way to do it. Back to when I was talking about fusion reaction, how we invest, how we research, how we plan for the future and grow, not extract. And that's my entire thing in this campaign is about people first. And Kendra said it really well about we can all do it together. So I find all of you inspirational, and I'm glad you're here tonight. So the next thing I want to do is bring everyone all together here on the screen, and we're just going to take some questions and see. There we go. Okay, so got the four of us, got the gang. Now there is, I believe, there's a Q&A. So if you're watching and you want to ask a question, just go to the Q&A and ask away. Otherwise, we can just start talking about stuff all day long. And I will start with the very thing about technology, because we talked about extractive, we talked about the companies taking stuff away. And like I said earlier, it's no different than when we see these different. The problem with the tech bros is they're constantly pushing ahead for valuation. It's a stock valuation. And this entire thing is about stock swindling. And if you look at now, we've discussed Fermi to this point. And for those of you who are further down the district around Wichita Falls or Denton, Decatur, Fermi is a gigantic, well, like I mentioned before, gigantic power plant, really, but data center a little bit slightly north of Amarillo next to Pantex nuclear facility. So all of this stuff combines to what's the valuation of the stock. Fermi had an initial public offering, a really quick one, and yeah, everyone should know the deal, right? When you do an IPO, initial public offering of stock, you do that to get money, you capitalize your company, then that money goes and you build up the company. But really, the modern way of doing this is you get an IPO, the people that own the stock cash out, They split. That's a generalized term, but that's what's happening. And we know this because recently we've changed the federal law that said about executive stock compensation. And we should really revert that law to go back to the way the country had been running for a long time and make it illegal. Because when employers are compensated on stock, their incentive is to do exactly what we're seeing now: build, manipulate the stock, the trade, and then have the valuation that's extractive in an economy. So, okay. Let's see what we have. Okay, Gene says, how advanced are the plans for the data centers? All right. So who wants to take away with that?
I can help with that, Mark. In terms of the plans for the data centers, there are standard plans that they have that require a AI server, certain configuration, certain rack sizes, panel sizes, pretty much plug and play once you have all the components. But getting all the components is one of the key problems. So the data centers themselves are fairly well, the designs I would assume are fairly well established. The key thing that we have been learning together as a community, and Kendra has been on top of this with her group constantly, is looking at the iterations of the gas number, like the gas plant, for instance. But the new iterations of the site plan, we went from 6 gigawatt plant that had 90, and I want people to understand this. A 6 gigawatt plant has this plant has 93 turbines. The 11 gigawatt plant that they want to go to is 140 turbines. So imagine 140, let's say 737 Southwest planes all lined up together, and with their engines peaked, full throttle for 24/7. And the amount of noise that would put out and is going to put out. So we're looking at 140 turbines, and an 11 gigawatt plant. And what you've been intimating, Mark, is true. It's the largest natural gas plant on the planet. And so, but this has the blessing of Greg Abbott. And so Greg Abbott, his TCEQ has been appointed to do what he asked them to do. And so once he has greenlit these projects, there really is no pushback and there really is no resistance. We saw some support from the Office of Public Counsel for our 93 page, funny, it's one page for every turbine, our 93 page analysis that our experts put out that gave some significant concerns, and the Office of Public Interest Counsel recommended that we be granted standing for our hearing request. That was denied, of course. We didn't expect it to be granted. But in terms of the overall design, it is changing almost with every shareholder communication that happens. And as Kendra identified today, there's actually they're trying to soften it because there's some, what is it? There's a campsite and some and a wilderness reserve there now, Kendra.
Yeah, their newest drawing has space for a wildlife reserve and some cabins for them to go out there and I don't know, hunt or look at animals I don't, that doesn't make sense to me, but that's what they did. It's just audacious.
Apparently, there'll be deaf animals with all the
Yeah,
noise from those turbines. I mean, it's insane.
maybe they're giving the animals jobs.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
that's some of the permanent jobs.
well, I'll tell you what, it's funny you say that because those will be the only permanent jobs will be animals walking around. I did talk to somebody who said her son got a job welding up at Fermi doing something. That's super. That's great. We want to do things like that to build an economy so a welder can get a job. That's terrific. He will not have that job for a long time. I mean, it won't be a long permanent job. We can do other methods to make these long jobs. We could do this. So the short term thinking about I get mine and then I'm done, and then the rest of us suffer. I think that's what I'm really seeing here. I didn't know that the number was up to 140 turbines. Yeah, 11 gigawatt plan is crazy. There, I don't think there's been any example in the history of the world of this close. And I really do think, guys, that it's like I said, it's just so I want to go back to the economics real fast. When people make announcements and they say, "Oh, by the way, we just have a habitat on Mars and now we're going to live there forever," the only reason for that is so that you can get your stock boost. And they say, "Oh, great, now they've done it." And I'll give you another example. There's some insider trading that happened when the president of the United States said, "We have a deal with the Iranians, so we're going to stop hostilities." Insider trading went up off hours on the market, and there was no deal. The trade went down, but whoever did that made a lot of money, and they had inside information, which really gets back to what both Kendra and Will were saying about corruption, endemic corruption. And I think this example of Fermi is endemic corruption, boosting stock prices and just total nonsense. And we don't have to get into who is doing it and who's running the show there. I don't want to get into that mess, but I want to talk about the whole idea and the concept. So, okay, I see a question. Can you repeat the full names of our panel, please, and areas of expertise? Why don't you guys take that. What do you think is your expertise? So we'll start with Michael, then we'll go to Will and up to Kendra.
Yeah, I'm my expertise is 4 decades in the nuclear industry, and then about a decade and a half on the state level, and then another decade here locally on public policy and public advocacy.
And Will?
Yeah, Will Masters. And my expertise is really like regional land use and groundwater development and interactions between the surface and groundwater.
Great. And Kendra?
My expertise is organizing. All I do is go around, talk to people, find out what they need, and put those networking skills to use and connect folks. Problem solving.
Great. And I'm Mark Nair, and my expertise is I sit in front of a sign with my name on it. So I'm running for Congress. Real quick, my background has been in innovation, entrepreneurship. I've taught some at the local college level. I love teaching classes to get people excited about things. I've taught economics and technology. I'm a mentor for the National Science Foundation. I'm a member of the National Academy of Inventors. And I think I am fed up. So there we are with craziness in the world. Okay. How is the
Let me
panhandle? Yes.
Oh, so that last question was kind of like how far developed are like the plans
Yeah,
for Fermi?
that's right.
And there's a few things I'd like to kind of throw out there. And so first, like the land itself, like the surface has been acquired, and that was essentially like a political deal that was done through Texas Tech University. If I understand it correctly, it is like they're leasing this land from Texas Tech, and there's been a very long-running relationship with the Department of Energy in regards to the land that is Pantex, and also this adjoining acreage, which is intended to be Fermi. There is also a deal with Energy Transfers where Fermi has the right to buy a great deal of natural gas for power production. And I think that there is a very legitimate question right now is like, is there an actual like good faith intent to deploy the nuclear, or is nuclear kind of like a shareholder friendly greenwashing thing? And the actual intent, I suspect, is to run it off of natural gas. And in fact, I think that's one of the pluses from the ownership class here is like, oh, hey, there's another significant customer to buy natural gas. They would not be buying it. Like, it's not gas that would be flared otherwise generally. they would be buying it and accessing it via Energy Transfer's pipeline network. And then, like 6 months or so ago, there was a bunch of uproar about an agreement with the city of Amarillo, whereby Fermi had asked to purchase like 2 to 10 acres, or I'm sorry, 2 to 10 million gallons of water a day from the city of Amarillo. And I'm not entirely sure what like the current status of that deal is, but kind of last I understood it was like the city council had basically approved a decision to sell water to Fermi. And that changes things a good bit. And it really drives me nuts because I think our community had a great deal of leverage. So Fermi is like a publicly traded partnership. So they have, or a publicly traded company, they have a whole lot of concern about like public image and PR. And so like they don't have the option of like, oh well, we're gonna resume developing in 3 years after we build out like our groundwater supply network. That's not a choice for them. They have to acquire water ASAP so that they can continue kind of unabated. And so there's just not a lot of sellers of large quantities of water like that. And so anyway, I think our city had a tremendous amount of leverage, and I fear that we lost much of it. Um, and then another, I think, like kind of development there was the Fermi originally had a contract with at least one tenant, and so the idea is they build out kind of these warehouses full of computers, and they rent that out to different users, like the Department of Defense or Google or whatever. And they had one like a guaranteed customer or client, but they kind of some kind of time frame lapsed, and so that customer that they had is no longer a guaranteed customer, which would cause them problems if, yeah, well, I mean, if our stock market kind of functioned like it's supposed to.
Mhm.
So cool.
Could I, Mark, and I, if there's an opportunity there, just a little bit more color on the water agreement. So the big problem is that the big problem for our community is that, and I would say this applies to every community, is the sooner the constituents, the residents of the community can find out about the project coming, the better. And in our case, in Amarillo, Texas, the mayor found out about this project through a presentation by the Secretary of Energy, or actually the Secretary of Energy was at Pantex at the time, and our mayor was invited to go out there, it just so happened that the founders of Fermi were also there, and they said they needed the mayor's help. They told him he needed his help, and this was relayed by the mayor to um, um, news agencies in a couple of different interviews. And so instead of going before the council and making this a public issue, a public decision, which the charter requires the mayor to go before the council to make this a public approval, the mayor instructed the city manager to begin working with the Fermi team behind closed doors. And I doubt those words were used, but that occurred for 6 months, 5 to 6 months, according to Trent Sizemore, who's the spokesman for Fermi. And so that water agreement was developed, and that began in May. In June, there was a letter of intent written by the Amarillo Municipal Department, which was the letter of intent used in the Fermi IPO to say that they had water rights before they had water rights, because the Amarillo Municipal Department cannot engage in an agreement to issue water rights to a company for 60 to 80 years. That's clearly within the scope of the approvals of the city council. And so we had essentially an ultra various act by the mayor, an illegal letter of intent issued by without the city council approval or knowledge. It's important to know that the city council didn't even know that this, and you have, being a city council member, you would say, hey, I should have been advised on this. I spoke to two city council members in regard to this letter of intent. They had no clue it was there. They actually assured me that there was no such thing, and I went so far as to file a complaint with the SEC on a false statement within the IPO regarding this letter of intent, for which I was immediately threatened with ruination through some sort of defamation process, which was absolutely false. But the problem is that we are way behind the eight ball. We were 6 months behind the eight ball, not able to organize, not able to get our ducks in a row or what have you. And it was all because our mayor in particular decided to take it upon himself in an ultra vires act to go forth and charge the manager and the staff with doing this behind closed doors. And then we learned in October, oh, this thing just, magically was sprung upon us.
Yeah, I have quite a bit to say about the incompetence of local leadership, based on my experience. In my experience, I saw firsthand incompetence of local leadership too. I mean, I worked with them. Um, but you are exactly right. You cannot do this. As a matter of fact, it should be public. You need to have two hearings, and people should know what's going on all the time. This is why we have the Texas Open Meetings Act.
Mhm.
This gets back to what Will was talking about earlier, which is, can we actually do things? Or is there's always this tsunami of bad actors with bad faith working, and it seems like it's always happening, but I firmly do believe we can do things. So I get very frustrated about it, angry, like pissed off about it. And these stories just, we need people to be active in the local community to show up and vote. When people don't, especially city council, that affects your life more than you realize. And people just don't even know when the elections are. You have 3% of people voting. If you look at the differential, and I know this is a tactical voting issue, but the differential between people voting on an issue and not voting on an issue, you might have 50, 60 people making the determination in the end. And that's it.
Mhm.
So when they don't show up, when they say, oh, it doesn't really matter, we'll violate the law. So I just appreciate what you're doing, Michael, on that, because it's very, very frustrating. Okay. Gene has asked another question. I have concerns about nuclear reactors providing power. There are earthquakes in this area. Have safety studies been done by disinterested scientists? I do not know if they've done any studies at all. I think maybe they've done a study on adding wildlife area with picnic tables. That's from what I'm hearing. I would be very surprised. I'll leave it up to you, to the rest of you, but I'd be very surprised if they have any information at all, scientific information about that.
They don't yet. They're doing their scoping study on the environmental impact statement, and Will can probably opine on that some more. But the fracking industry and the Gulf, the increase of earthquakes due to fracking is something that's should be factored into this as well. But the scoping statement is coming out. There's an opportunity to comment on that, and then the EIS will follow. But Will, I'm sure he can add some additional information on that in his area of expertise.
Well, kind of ironically, a lot of the good like research and data that we have in regards to how the aquifer kind of interacts with the surface is because of Pantex. And so Pantex has for many years employed a number of kind of like biologists and researchers, and they've studied the playa wetlands that are on this land that is to be developed in depth. And so there's a lot of knowledge that would not exist, and it does because of this kind of like a historically used as like a buffer zone. And so it's just kind of like funny. It's like we learn to appreciate the high plains and the playas because of this country, and here we're going to turn it into a computer warehouse. Um, there is so in terms of the nuclear in particular, there is a U.S. regulatory body, the NRS, and there is this pilot program that allows for much faster and cheaper deployment with lessened kind of permitting hurdles. And as I understand it, this Fermi project will be the first of its kind of ever to go through this pilot process. And so there will be a good bit of federal or studies for the federal permitting. and or but like the regular rules won't really apply, and that's because this is kind of this like hastened pilot project, but also because of other like executive orders that kind of kind of prevent state or environmental laws from impeding development.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, thank you. What? So I have another question. Leilani. Oh, so Leilani is a fantastic woman who's running for the Texas House out of Wichita Falls. And I would tell the exact House district, and I just went out of my head, but somebody will remind me. 69. Yeah. Hello, Mark. I'm trying to find answers. May I ask Michael and others? The AI data centers are coming. So, is the reality exist in which wind energy, solar, and other green energies could fill the data centers' demands for power just as well as water greedy nuclear facilities that are needed to create electricity? I will jump in on this one real fast and I'll leave it to the experts. Um, Nuclear power provides a lot of energy, more so than, so there's a energy density is basically what we get to. And that when we look at what is natural gas, when we look at what is coal, the whole reason that we have moved to natural gas from coal is purely economics. It's not anything about an ethical standard. It's really one was cheaper than the other because of fracking, what Michael's talked about. So there are answers. Solar power is the cheapest power that humans have done per megawatt of power, but there are some difficulties with it, mainly storage, battery storage. There's some interesting stuff going on in Norway where they're using solar to heat salt, melt salt, and then that heats buildings during the night while the salt kind of comes back to its form. I'm really simplifying this. But photovoltaics are really interesting technologies that are non-destructive to a point. You can use photovoltaics. Those are solar panels in a big field. But the question is transmission, and the question is storage. Batteries are getting there, but they're not quite there. So having a nuclear facility that can provide power to, say, 400,000 homes is more efficient than having a solar farm that can do the same thing with the current status of the technology. But that doesn't mean that we can't, like I had said before, start pushing into research into other forms of doing things. I will tell you that I think the richest man in the world has said we can put data centers in orbit and then have microwave power from the planet to the sun. Something crazy. I don't know. I don't need the Death Star, like putting a big laser across the panhandle. So there are a lot of things that people are saying that make no sense technically. And maybe some of the stuff I just said makes no sense technically. I'll leave it up to the rest of the group to validate what I'm saying. But the answer is there are methods of providing power if we're smart and we put the right research funding into. I'll give you another example. Um, the Manhattan Project is a fraction of the money that we are spending on data centers, a fraction. And that was an existential thing that happened in World War II. We could do the same thing, especially when we're looking at how the climate is changing. I will give you another example. Today, it's about 98 degrees in Amarillo. Tomorrow will be 102, 103. And then the next day is 57. So, when Clayton in the video said sometimes it's a rough place to live, rough because you don't know what the weather is going to be like, which gets into what green energy is and how you could determine the wattage that comes into different panels. So anyway, that's my rambling answer to some of this. I'll leave it up to the rest of you guys to pop in for this.
Well, there's a in terms of small modular reactors, there are some purpose-built small modular reactors that are basically plug and play for AI data centers, purpose-built for AI data centers, and they are far less water intensive, almost to the point of not being water intensive at all. You essentially have a a molten salt, like Mark was talking about. This is heated by the nuclear reactor as opposed to solar energy, but you have a molten salt reactor that's essentially a battery, nuclear powered battery that you plug and play. They're built in a factory and delivered to the site on a truck. and then you decide, depending on the size of the facility that you need and the power needs that you have, you scale those up and add those to the center, the data center footprint, and those are all custom design essential nuclear batteries. The interesting thing is that and Will was actually going back to Will, I mean, absolutely right, spot on. The feint toward nuclear or nuclear powered AI, all of this jingoism toward this war with China kind of a thing is all just a ploy to get people to back it when it's obvious and clear that this is just a natural gas play. They may be trying to do some things, some strategic projects with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, but to me, the timeline with AI and its in incremental development in nuclear construction cannot keep up with. There's no way, and it'll be played out by the time the nuclear reactors are finally turned on. But the upside is that the Texas Nuclear Alliance, that I'm a member of, does have very promising nuclear technologies. You can combine that with wind. You can combine that with solar, and have a very broad ranging energy mix to have a very small footprint on your environment as you go through and build these things. But we're looking at people who are wanting to cash out in 2 years, and or their stocks are maturing and
Yeah.
are becoming vested in 2 years as opposed to 7 to 10 years. So it's a completely different play. And Will was spot on when he said this is looks like all gas, and it is.
Let's take a second to talk about timelines because it's important that you brought this up. I want to go back to the technology. NVIDIA is one of the Magnificent Seven companies that had mentioned takes a majority of the S&P 500. Okay, we know that's not the economy, we know, but it is a measure of failure when it all falls apart. Well, NVIDIA makes these chips. The chips are expensive. They might be $300,000 per a chip. For a rack of these things, we might be looking at $30 million, give or take. Right now, we know from shipments and what NVIDIA is saying in their P&L and L and their prognostications that they are shipping chips. They've sold the chips, but they're not implemented in data centers. They're just sitting there. So if you are making a data center and you're funding the data center through debt, the stock is the way to leverage the debt, and the debt is from private equity debt, basically. I will stress to all of you, I know it's not an AI data center thing, but the danger in our economy on private equity debt is gigantic because it is opaque and nobody understands what's going on. From 2008, after the financial crisis, the banks held on, they had their money reserves, then it all kind of collapsed. So these smart guys with very shiny shoes said, I have an idea. We're going to leverage the debt ourselves, borrow from banks, but we'll handle it here in this middle ground. That middle ground, nobody understands really what's happening. So that's how they're funding the stock boosting because they have to do something to get the valuation back, like Michael was talking about. But it makes no sense because you can't be sitting on chips in a warehouse after you bought them for, let's say, $2 billion of chip sales. You have them in a warehouse, you haven't implemented them in your racks because you're still building your outfit. So what are you doing? Every single day you're losing money. Nothing makes sense. So then let's say you implement the chips, you get them involved, you get them going. You're 2 years out of date because these chip lifespans, 18 months. That it's an operational expense that makes no sense in a business because they burn out. So you burn out, you're 2 years behind your competitor who gets the new chips from NVIDIA, then the cycle continues and it's just failure again and again. That leads to the timeline on the nuclear facilities. These guys don't make any sense. So they say, we're going to build out tomorrow. Tomorrow can't come. Starship Abilene right now, or the project is Starship Abilene. Um, I think they said they want to be fully operational 2026. I don't even know if it's 20%. It's none of it's true. They're just lying to us as this kind of scammy operation to boost their valuation. Okay, so enough of that kind of, sorry. It's just that when I hear you say that about the timeline is a real thing with all of this stuff together, but we are being fooled. And we can ask critical questions about this, but all these guys think there's a great line. There's a really terrific line from a writer named Cory Doctorow. And he says, you know what? People look at this mountain of shit and they say, well, there's got to be a pony under it. Well, that's where we are. But there is no pony. I don't know why a pony would be there, but maybe he's in the wildlife refuge or something. But that's the line. It's a good one. Bob asked, I thought I answered this question. I guess not. How is the Panhandle Groundwater District involved? So, Will, you might know this one. Or Kendra.
Yeah, so the groundwater conservation districts, generally their position is they can't regulate like the intended use of the groundwater. And so the most that they can do is kind of like permit withdrawals, but they're not able to say it's okay to withdraw groundwater to grow corn, you know, for ethanol, and it's not okay to withdraw groundwater for AI development. And so I don't see the groundwater conservation districts as a likely hurdle.
Kendra, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Oh yeah, well, I was just pointing because like that's our water guy. However, I have been a big proponent of email everybody and call everybody and ask everybody anything constantly. And that is one of my favorite things to do. So Brittany at the conservation district, who's specifically over this project's area, what has been really cool to answer all the questions that I've thrown her direction, because I'm having to learn all of this stuff at the same time as try to organize people around it. So I'll email her and I'll say, hey, what's your role in this? What do you have control over? And I just encourage everyone to do that as well, because I found out what Will is just saying, obviously, that they can't say what the water can or cannot be used for. But what it did tell me was how much they're allowed to use per well that they drill, how far away from each other those wells have to be, and how much they're allowed to pull at a time, like they go by per minute. And in having those calculations and being able to guess like how much they need and then how much does Fermi probably need, which Fermi hasn't been upfront with us to say like it's going to actually need 100 million gallons of water per day. That's just something we can guess based on 6 gigawatts of natural gas at, you know, X amount of gallons of water per day, and nuclear reactors and, you know, on and on. So I can say, well, if they can pull X amount from the ground via wells and they can pull X and they need this amount, then I could do some really easy math and find out, okay, well, they're going to be short this amount. So that means that they're going to have to ask for X amount from our city, which is where like this 2.5, 5.5, and eventually 10 million gallons per day will come from. Well, they're still going to be short. So where's the rest of the water going to come from? Well, then we see things like this permit that was just posted about today for them asking for another 700 acres from another area. And they've also purchased a lot of those family lands like around the project. And those places don't require permits new because they already existed to provide for that household. So they didn't have to do anything to request that. I did find out from her that because they do not know how much water they need in total, they don't know how much to ask for in their permit. So they haven't asked for their permit from that conservation district, but they're planning to connect their using the residents' water wells around that, using our city, using potentially some brackish water. I'm not really sure how that works if everyone's vying for the same water, but you know, all of that to say is find out who your district is around you and start talking to those people, because even if they don't want to help you, they can at least answer your questions if you know how to ask the right ones.
Well, this will lead to the very next question then, which is from anonymous attendee, which I think is a default name, but even if it isn't, it's an awesome name. I am in high school. I'm a high school student, As someone with a huge interest in technology and AI and some knowledge of cooling systems and processors, I'm interested in making a comment at City Council for why the Fermi project is harmful. What are the city policy numbers that I need to input to submit the form? And do you have any advice? Okay, so I'll jump on this one just a little bit here. We've been talking mostly about Fermi, but I know that there are other people with data centers that are kind of coming into their communities. I know Archer City, for example, is under threat of a large data center. So maybe this answer will apply to all of these areas. Different city councils have different policies about how you get to speak to them. I say get to speak to them. My experience when I was in the city council in Amarillo, our meetings were, I think, at 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't know why we had them at 3 in the afternoon when people are working. So I really was forceful of changing them to 6 p.m. so people could come. One of the reasons why the city said you can't do that is because it adds hours of people working there. But I think that's a terrible answer. I think we should have meetings where people could attend. So then we had public comment, come and speak. And then it became public comment where you have to fill out a form. And then public comment where you had to fill out a form 24 hours ahead of time. And all of these barriers were barriers to your speech to your elected representatives, which drove me nuts. Now, it's true that some people will monopolize the conversation. Um, I can't see the screen, Brian. Some people will monopolize the conversation, so you have 3 minutes to speak. So my advice is, whatever the policy is that the city has established, fill out the form. I don't think you need to have much data. Usually, it's your name and your physical address, and say your piece. Because you know what? You could say anything you want. And if the city, and this is just general advice, if the city says our policy is you can't say bad things about the city council, you can't say, hey, you cannibal, you absolutely can. Because you have a First Amendment right to redress the government. And of all the things that drives me crazy is if you're going to get into this game and you want to be a representative of the people, then you got to suck it up and be the representative of the people. And people are going to tell you why you're wrong all the time. And you know what? You might be wrong, but then you fix it. So, but you have to learn by talking to them. But you can't hide away behind some vague notion of a rule or a piece of paper. You have to be there for them. You have to go out the door and you talk to them. So maybe my opinion is different than a lot of people we elect. I think it's true. We elect a lot of people who are for different reasons are in office, as we see with our local congressional representative right now, who does a grand total of 0. But I will just say, be active. Don't let a barrier that they put in place be artificial to your voice, because you have a constitutional right to redress the government. So do it. Be loud, be obnoxious, but do it. Okay. Does anyone else have any comment on that? But I think
Mark, to your point, there's actually in 2019 there was a thanks to in large part to our former mayor, there was a provision in state law. It's Texas Open Meetings Act is Chapter 551 of the Government Code. And for those who are wanting to know what their rights are when they're speaking to their local government, Chapter 551-007 is I'm getting a fan call. 551-007. If you do anything, learn that provision. There's 4 paragraphs to it. The final paragraph talks about the fact that the local government cannot prevent you from criticizing its actions, policies, speech, what have you. And so many people go up there fearful. Maybe it's their first time to speak in public and they're terrified and they're told lies basically in terms of what their rights are. And this happens in Amarillo. It happens all across. There are some really bright examples, Panhandle, Carson County being one of them, where there is an actual interaction. And I know, Mark, when you were on the city council, that was one of the things you did drive was interaction with the public during public comment. Which, oh, what a crazy thing! And let's have a conversation. But I would strongly recommend for anyone listening to this is that you go to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551 of the Government Code. Look at 551.007, and therein lies all of your rights in regard to public comments.
Yes. So thank you, Michael. That's right. You will hear. I know we're off topic a little bit of data centers, but this is important because if you want to go and express your opinion, you will hear your elected people sit up there. This is the part of the Texas Open Meetings Act, and they will say, "Speak to us, but we will not speak back to you because we cannot, because it's illegal." The reason that this exists is because you need to have a thing on the, you need to have a topic on the agenda so other people in the community who are interested in that topic will see it and show up too. So it's not just a thing that happens. Well, unfortunately, the elected leaders that you have use this as a barrier. So they say, well, I can't talk. We'll just be quiet and just sit here. But what they can do is say, we're going to add it to the agenda. They can ask some questions of the staff. They can refer people to you. They can talk to you after the meeting as long as it's not a quorum of your elected people. In Amarillo, that's 3 people. It's crazy that the quorum is 3 people. Don't get me started on why the city council is too small. It's the biggest city in Texas that has such low representation. And they take advantage of that. Michael is right. They will lie to you. They will abuse the truth in so many distorted ways. And I have been, yeah, I'll tell everybody, I've been radicalized on corruption, saw it firsthand, and I cannot stand it because it steals from you. It steals your tax money, it steals your future, it steals your opportunity. And really, it happens every single day. Data centers are an example of that. And the backroom deals are an example of that. So we can go on all night about the Texas Open Meetings Act and why it's supposed to protect you and what it doesn't really do. But okay, Tanya.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
This is your friendly neighborhood campaign manager.
Oh,
Just
Colin.
letting you know we are nearing the end of our segment here. We have time for about 2 more questions. So if anybody has any questions, throw them up in the chat. And while I'm here, I do want to let everybody know if you registered with us on our Mobilize link, you will have access to this footage as well as a few QR codes as how you can get involved, as well as some sign-up sheets for the Panhandle First Coalition. If you're down in Denton, Wichita Falls, our friends at the Panhandle First said that they can get you connected with a local group. So please sign up and they will direct you where to go.
Thank you, Colin. The voice, the amorphous voice of Colin Knutson coming into the chat. Yeah, Colin is both my campaign manager, but he's also running for the Texas House as well. So I find it very encouraging that we get all these people together to try to make some changes in our lives that I will really hope will be beneficial and good progress for the future. All right, so Tanya asks, and the other question, anonymous attendee, they're both similar. I'll go to Tanya's question. Each of you, please tell us how to join the effort and what you need us to do. And then our high school anonymous student, what are the actions that my friends and I can take as high schoolers to go against these data center projects in this region? That is the action we're going to end with. And Kendra, I'm shuffling it off to you here. Shuffling it, is that a word, shuffling? I'm shuffling it off to you. I've invented a new word.
If the people know what you're saying, then it is a word, actually. So the way that you can get involved is very easily just find people who are also in the fight. I'm personally a part of and one of the main organizers for Panhandle First Coalition, and this is several different groups that do mutual aid and activist work in Amarillo for Amarillo and the surrounding areas. And we just all got together and got some meeting agreements together and said, like, hey, we want to work together, but we want to make sure that we're all not following behind just one specific person's lead. We're all making our own decisions in this fight and attacking from multiple angles. Our agreement in this is that we represent the top like 26 counties in Texas Panhandle, or how many ever there are up there. But obviously our nose is stuck everywhere. We're, Arizona and South, I guess. But I can for sure try to find someone in Dallas, Denton, all of the and y'all have so much going on over there. That's so crazy. But there are people fighting, so I can try to connect you. And that is how I would recommend that you get involved. Just find our Facebook page, shoot us a message, give us a follow. go to amarilloaction.org/AI, and that will put you in touch with our website. If you don't mess with Facebook, that's a really easy way to do like our call of actions. So if we're like, hey, right now we have to file this, or right now we have to send emails to this person, we make it really easy where you just kind of click a button and you go and do it. So that's how I would say to get involved.
Great.
Um,
Thank you, Kendra. And I know that Colin said that he will be emailing the link or the form to fill out stuff, your interests that will go to Kendra, and then she'll distribute it to the right places. So thank you for doing all that. And I just want to say thank you, all of you, for coming tonight. The one thing we have in the world that is our time. That's the most valuable thing. We don't get it back. It keeps going away and leaving us. So that's I mean, this is an hour and a half of your time. I really appreciate it. I think we're all in this fight together, all sorts of different reasons, but it's for the community and for the health, wealth and the well-being of the people who live here. And I know that all of our hearts are in the right place for this. It's a tough fight all the way around, politically for me. But for action, it always takes action. So I appreciate all of you coming tonight. I appreciate everybody watching and listening in and the questions. It's important to me that we do these town halls where we really engage with people all the time and we pull this campaign off. This is what we will keep doing. And we do it online, we do it in person. But I'm not going to, what's the word I use? Shuff my duty off. I'm not going to stop. We're going to keep showing up. That's the job. And we're not seeing that job happen now. And when it doesn't happen, things like Fermi data centers happen over the will of the people. So I just really appreciate it. I am supposed to say, while we're at the very end, we're doing a Panhandle Together tour. This is going to be April 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. Through all the different communities in the Panhandle. It's me, Clayton Tucker, Holly Taylor, Cullen Knutson, Diana Loyal, or Loyal. Thank you, Loya. Sorry, Diana. And we're all going to go to these different places and just chat with people. And it's never been done before. It's important that we talk to people. It's important people talk to us. So that's what tonight was important. And I hope that this was effective for everyone listening and watching. Like I said, I can't thank you guys enough for coming here. I know it's an hour and a half out of your day, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you again.
Thanks, Mark.
And for that, we'll just sign off, and thanks everybody, and goodbye.
It was an honor. Thank you, everybody.